think my foot is broken. She was like, well, you walked in here. There's no way your foot is broken. So I had broken 8 bones in my foot.
Oh, wow.
And I tore my I had a Lisfranc fracture, which is something I never knew about. It only happens, I guess, to football players. Like, you get a Lisfranc fracture.
What was you doing?
We don't want to talk about it.
Welcome, Kiala, to the Luray Way. Thank you for coming today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
So what kind of day have you had today?
You know what? My day just started before I got here. It's Saturday. I woke up. I was like, you know what? I'm going to take my time. Get dressed.
So you've come to talk to us a little bit more about financial literacy, and as well as like young adulthood and young marriage. So we're going to kind of start your journey a little back. You're not that old, but just a little further.
Just a little back, a couple days ago.
So you met your husband at 15, right?
16. I was
16. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you guys meet?
We met at school.
Okay.
So we met at school. We sat next to each other, alphabetical order, kind of put us in a position where we didn't have a choice but to know each other. And so we met at school, and from there we just, when you have to sit in alphabetical order for school, you kind of like, you can't get away from a person. And so we just kind of developed a relationship from there. I knew his sister. He was a grade ahead of me, but we ended up being in it was not like it was in high school. So it's like one of those classes. I want to say it was like grade of writing, where it wasn't like a grade specific class. It was like multiple grades. And so even though he was a grade ahead of me, just by, like I said, our last names, we actually sat next to each other. I knew his sister. He was an athlete. And so we just kind of bonded all the time, created a relationship, and
I need water. It's the awkward pause. So then at 25, you guys got married. What are some of the obstacles you had to overcome before getting to the altar?
I think that for us, it was when you've 25 it's a somewhat, for some people they think, oh well, 25 I'm an adult. Yes, you are physically an adult, but it's still one of those growing stages where you kind of you're not who you used to be, but you're really not who you become. You're just like at that place where you're like, okay, I kind of have an idea of what I want and where I want to go and what I want to do, but there's still like the growth that's going on inside of you, and so I think in the beginning, like the hardest part was just kind of coming out of like that immature place and then arriving at that mature place at the same time.
So how did you do that though? Like, 'cause 25 to me, like I'm not even 25 yet. I'm 22. And so 25 to me is kind of like you said, that in between stage where you're like early 20s still, but you're not 30 yet.
Right.
And like it's a different level for each person. Like it's not like, oh, every 25-year-old has the same maturity level. For me, I feel like I'm more mature than a lot of 22-year-olds, but I'm not at a 25-year-old level.
Right.
So like, how did you guys I guess, because you got married, and then when did you have your first child?
So we had our children before, well, 2 of our children before we got married.
Okay.
So I think that is what, for me, because our story is a little bit different, we just kind of did things, I think when you're younger, you kind of struggle, you think you did it wrong, but when you start to realize you just kind of did things the way that it should have went, and I think that was part of our growing process prior to getting married. Is like when you become a parent, like now you have to take these different challenges and these different steps with parenting that kind of, at some point, they kind of mesh things together. It's like, okay, well, I'm learning this through being a parent, but not also through being a parent. I have to be a partner with you in order for us to be effective parents. And so now this is what's going to kind of get us over these hurdles.
Okay. So you said you two came from like 2 different backgrounds. Like he was more came from like a more free-spirited family, and you came from more like a conservative family. How did you unify those and like find balance, like even with like being married with children?
It's hard because you have to sit down and kind of have those difficult conversations, and I think that you learn to find an appreciation in both, because I came from a very conservative family that, in my mind, or not even just in my mind, but just the way that my family was. It's like, you have to do things this way. I came from a family, it's like, you get married, you have kids, you go to college, you do all of these things. And it makes you hard to be an individual sometimes, because you are setting yourself up to meet the expectations of everybody in your family. So, my aunt did this, my uncle did this, my grandparents did this. Whereas he came from, like you said, a more free-spirited family. And so you understand that even if you don't hit these marks, I still love you. You're not a disappointment to me. Like, we still are a family. And so I think that together it collectively helped us, because it helped me to understand, even with being a parent, to explain that to my children. You might not do it exactly how I want you to do it, but I'm still here. I'm still going to love you. We're still going to, like, you're not a disappointment to me. Like, everybody has a plan, and it's going to go exactly how it's supposed to go.
Right.
And so I think that that's kind of how we combine the two. It's like, yes, you have the structure from your side, but we also have a little bit of that gray area where you don't have to feel like you have to hit a certain standard. You have to make yourself happy first, and everything else will fall in order.
So how long have you guys been married in total?
So 10 years in October. It was 10 years in October.
And what stage are you guys at now?
So right now we are co-parenting. We're separated, but we are in a very good place. We co-parent effectively. And I think that going back to the very beginning where I said the person you were at 16, and then the person you were at 25, and now who I am at 30 something, I won't say exactly. It's just learning that God places us in positions for reasons, and sometimes when he says you gotta move, regardless of what that looks like, you gotta do what you gotta do, and he will always work it out so that it works out exactly how it should go.
So when you say co-parenting, like, that looks different for everybody. So what does it look like now for you? Like, what, I guess, what advice would you give someone who's in that stage? I'm trying to find that balance from being like, you said you were separated. You didn't use the word divorce.
Yeah, we're not divorced yet.
Okay.
So we are separated right now.
So from a separated space in your co-parenting, what does that look like?
That looks like you finding it, to me, for me personally, is submitting completely to God. Because we forget that God is a very jealous God. And sometimes even with a marriage, a relationship, a job, we put these things before our relationship with God. And so when he steps in, he might say, a separation doesn't mean a divorce, or whatever the case may be. Sometimes he has to isolate us. And it's scary, because he might isolate you from the person you thought, this is my person. But if he's saying, you know what, this is a hindrance, this is distracting you from what I need you to do right now, sometimes it's just taking that moment to be isolated, to accept it, and just, feel it. You got to feel it. You're going to have emotions, but it's also knowing that if it's truly God sent, it's not going to be messy. And so for some people, they look at co-parenting and it's very scary for them, because they see, the drama and the courts and all of this. But if you're truly in line with God, none of that is even a factor, because he's put you in that position and he's going to work it out. Whether you guys have a day where you don't agree and it's like, okay, you don't talk to me, I don't talk to you, he's going to work it out to where the path is smooth, because God doesn't create mess.
Yeah.
There's no mess in him. If it's mess, it's not him.
He ain't messy.
Yep. If it's mess, it's not him. It's not. It ain't.
Yeah. I will say, like, he's not messy, but things will get hard.
Oh, get hard. Absolutely.
So you have to know the difference between the two.
Yep. Absolutely. And there are going to be messy situations. There are going to be difficult situations. And so I don't want anybody to misinterpret that either, because they'll see something, oh, that ain't God. He'll show you how to maneuver through that situation. And so everything else that's why he says peace that surpasses all understanding. Because it might be messy, but you'll have that peace that's like, I see you. I see you. I got you. But
can't disturb me.
But you can't. but you can't. Nice try.
So do you regret, like, getting married at the age that you did? Like, I don't know if you know, but we're engaged. Yeah. So coming from somebody, thank you. Coming from somebody that's about to go into this covenant, and I'm even younger than you were, like, what, do you have any regrets? And if you do,
I don't have any regrets.
Okay.
I don't have any regrets about getting married. I don't have any regrets about being married, because marriage is a beautiful thing. And even though I have learned that regardless of what happens, and that there, as long as you have God in it, I think that if there was a regret, I would say that I didn't invite God in more. But as long as you have God in it, as long as your partner, as long as you guys can go to God together on behalf of each other separately, as long as God is the foundation of your marriage, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what happens, like, because He's going to see you through. He's going to be there. He's going to show up every time that you call, every time that you reach out to Him, every obstacle that you guys have, every moment where you're like, I'm uncertain. He's going to give you everything that you need. And so I don't have any regrets, because when you are doing something for God, there's no regrets in it. As long as you know that I'm doing this because this is what His Word tells me, this is what He led me to do. And you might lose, like, Job lost it all.
Right.
But he had no regrets, because I'm doing it because this is what God told me to do. I'm doing it because I'm serving God. And so if I lose it all, I'm okay. I'm perfectly fine, because the only regret is not doing what He told you to do, or not including Him in whatever you're doing. That's the only regret that you could ever have. As long as He's there, it doesn't matter what happens.
Seek Him first.
Seek Him.
Yeah. So what advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
First bit of advice would be to heal. Heal from everything. A lot of times we think that we're over something, and we've put a Band-Aid over something that was like, that needed stitches. It's like, I really need to heal from this. And we don't realize it until something happens later on in life, and then it triggers that emotion. It's like, okay, why do I feel so strongly about this, or why do I feel so hurt about this? And so I say to heal, to just make sure that you are doing all of the work so that you can show up as your best self. Because we fall in love, or we have relationships, or even friendships. It doesn't have to be in love. We have these things that aid that pain, or aid whatever we feel like we need to heal from. And so we're having fun, and life is vibrant, but we have to remember those feelings that we have, like when it's just us in the darkness by ourselves. Like when you can lay in the dark by yourself, and your mind is not thinking of all of these different things that could negatively impact you, that's when you know you've arrived. Like, okay, I'm here, like I'm good. But if you lay down at night and you still have those things that not necessarily worry you, because we're always going to have worries, we're always going to have things that kind of bother us, but if there are things that you like, I'm thinking about my childhood, and I'm thinking about what so-and-so said about me, or how so-and-so treated me, heal from those things, because if not, it's going to show back up.
Do you believe that you can be in the healing process during a marriage?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You can definitely, and I think, again, that goes to just staying with God. He can, healing isn't instant, and healing doesn't have a timeline. What somebody can heal and feel like they're thoroughly, and they could be thoroughly healed in a level of time that some people might take. It's like a body. It's just like going to a hospital. Everybody doesn't get discharged at the same time.
Yeah.
The doctor doesn't sign off that note. Sometimes you got to come back a couple of times. I know I broke my foot, and everybody was like, oh, it's going to take you forever. I broke, when I first broke it, I walked around on it for a whole day, right? I walked around, and I kept telling everybody, like, my foot is broken, my foot is broken.
You got high pain tolerance.
And everybody was like, your foot is not broken, because I was walking around. I went to the mall and everything. Let me tell you, it was so bad. Long story short, it was so bad, I had a Croc. I had a regular shoe on, then I had to put on a Croc, and I couldn't put it in sport mode because my foot was broken. So I was like, and I went to the mall, and the guy had asked me, he's like, why do you have on two different shoes? I was like, I think my foot is broke. And he was like, baby girl, if your foot was broken, you would not be walking around the mall. I was like, I'm pretty sure I broke a bone. And so whatever, I waited, and I went to the hospital. It was like maybe 1 o'clock the next morning. And when I went to check in, I told the nurse, I was like, I think my foot is broken. She was like, well, you walked in here. There's no way your foot is broken. So I had broken 8 bones in my foot.
Oh, wow.
And I tore my I had a Lisfranc Frank fracture, which is something I never knew about. It only happens, I guess, to football players. Like, you get a Lisfranc Frank fracture.
What was you doing?
We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about it. That's why I don't want to go to the emergency room, because I had to come up with a reason why that happened to me. But when I went, the doctor, he was like super, because when I even told him, he kind of laughed. He was like, okay, we'll get you in for, you probably just tore something. And when he came back, he was like, you broke 8 bones. And I was like, okay, I told you my foot was broke. And so, but that just goes to show, everybody's healing isn't the same. Everybody's pain tolerance isn't the same. And everybody kept telling me, oh, you're going to need surgery. I never had the surgery. I was like, I don't need surgery. My foot is going to heal. But I've had people who've said, I broke 2 bones, and I was in a cast for this long. And I was like, nope, never had a cast. I had a little scooter. I went to Disney World with my kids on crutches. Everybody's healing is different. And
You a
so
different type of person. Because ain't no way you broke 8 bones and you
I
just walked
did.
in the
I
hospital.
did. I did. I walked in there and it was like everybody and I laugh about it because everybody kept laughing. I was like, I'm telling y'all, my foot is broke. Like I heard it break. I felt it break. I went down for a
Wow.
minute.
You went down for a
I
minute. That was
did, and then I
it.
got up and I went to the mall, and I was like, okay, I got things to do. I'm gonna go to the hospital later on just in case they try to put me in a cast.
Oh my gosh.
But it was broken, all over. I shattered the whole top part of my foot, so I couldn't put on a shoe for a long time.
How long did it take to like heal?
Well, I just wore flats for like they were like, well, don't wear travel here. So like, it took about 2 years before I could like really put on like heels and be comfortable. Then I kind of had to like the little kitten heel, and then I had to work my
Yeah.
way back up. But now I'm like, I'm good.
Hmm.
There's some days like I'm like the old people, like when it rains, it hurts.
What would you say was your biggest mistake, like, that you made in your marriage?
um, just not doing the healing work before. Just not realizing that there's a little girl inside of me that I've lived a life where I have always been very dependent, like independent, I mean, just very independent, just growing up my lifestyle, my mom, and just, my mom had a lot of responsibilities. My biological father was not there, and my stepfather didn't come in until we were almost of age to where she didn't need anybody to help support her. So we kind of learned how to do things on our own. And I'm not the oldest, but I'm the second. So my sister's 11 years older than I. So she lived a
Wow.
whole different life than what we lived, in a sense, because by the time I was old enough to, you know, 12, 13, she was out of the house and she was married, but I still had little siblings. And so I became very independent at a young age. And you don't realize the trauma that kind of causes because you think you lived a good life. It's like I watched my mom go to school and go to work, and I took care of my siblings, and we were safe and we were warm. And then you realize, like, I have control issues. I can't let go. I can't not do this because that little girl is so used to, you got to step up. You got to do this. You got to be here. You got to be responsible. You have to. And so if you don't do the work before, you'll show up in your marriage being that person where you got to have control. And it's like, that's not what God intended. God did not intend for you to be a woman in control. He intended for you to be Eve and let this man do what he's supposed to do. But it causes friction if you don't know how to let go.
So how did that healing process go for you? Like, how did you realize that, and then how did you like start the journey of healing?
I realized it because it creates conflict. It's going to create static. You're not going to, and if you're listening to your partner, you'll realize that even if they don't, say exactly that, like you need to get some help, or you need to stop being controlling, they'll tell you different things. And so it showed up in different ways. And my mom was very good about like kind of coaching me in the right direction, like telling me things. Like I think that my greatest advice that I got from everybody right before I got married, and it's a really good thing for you, right before I got married, I had everybody write like just advice or words of encouragement, like for me. And like I didn't read them right then and there. I read them later, like when I was having a bad day or when I was going through something. And so there was a day that I pulled one out, and it was from my mom, and it just said, "Say thank you." And I was like, what? Like, what? And so I ended up calling. I was like, Mom, why did you? And she was like, Kylie, you forget that, you have a person that's here and they're doing the work with you, and you're so, good at being, because my personality is to manage and kind of just like, you do things and you'll say, okay, well, make sure you remember the kids got to do this and make sure you remember that. And she said, but stop and say thank you.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, that goes a long way. Like, you don't realize it. And so I think that's when I realized, like, okay, I got some issues. I got to work this thing out in me.
Yeah. But I don't know, it's something about our childhood has such a big effect on
It
us.
does.
Like,
It does.
it's crazy. Like, and then it's weird that you don't see it until certain situations are presented. Like you said, like I didn't see a lot of the things that I had issues with until I got into this relationship. And then I was like, what are you talking about? Nobody has ever told me that before. But it's like he's the only one that can see it because that's when it comes out.
Yep.
It has sparked something in me personally that wants to heal. Because at first I didn't realize how much needed to be healed until those things were revealed in that way. There's some statistic out there, I don't know what it is, but it says that a lot of marriages end or have problems due to like financial situations, right? So tell us like the story about how you inherited, I think it was your grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you kind of like started getting into more of like financial literacy or.
So right before, like right before we got married, right at the time of it happening, my grandmother, so going back to my biological father, I didn't have a relationship with him, but I've always had a very, very good relationship with his family. So even though he was kind of absent, his parents, which were my grandparents, they kind of stepped up and they filled in that void. And so the year that I got married, my grandfather had already passed away when I was younger, and then the year that we got married, my grandmother passed away, and at that time she had put for my sister and I. So my dad is the only child, so we were the only two grandchildren that she had. She had put away quite a few assets and properties just for us to, make the best out of life, and so we inherited it, and she had actually gone the whole extra step of making sure that we had like financial advisors and just different people, kind of wrote a game plan for us. It was not more or less, this is exactly what you need to do. It was like, this is for you, but this is to create a better life for you. So just make sure that you do what you got to do, do what you got to do. And so I took that very serious. For me, it was like for a lot of people, and I was at a very still young age. I was only 25. And so for a lot of people, for the people around me, it was like jackpot. Like we just hit the jackpot. It's like, oh, cars, money, clothes, and all. For me, it was like, no, it was like stability. And I think that because I had become a mom at such a young age, I had my younger two. I wasn't a teen, but I was 19 when I got pregnant, and I had them at 20 and 21, so back to back. And so at the time, they were still young, and like in my mind, it just was about me like creating this life for them. Like I had always worked. I've always, I was never. My story is not. It's a little more unique because of the family that I came from. It was very much so that you get pregnant, okay, you got to do what you got to do. So I always had to have a job. My expectation was to keep a job. You have to have benefits. We don't, not that to talk bad about anybody because everybody has their own, but it's like you got to grind this out, girl. You're not going to you're not going to expect for the government to take care of you and those kids. You're going to do this. You got to do it. And so when that happened, when it came to that point where I had it, I was like, relief because I had worked so hard. Like there were times that I had to work jobs where I had to fluctuate between him. So if it meant I was working from 3 in the afternoon till midnight so that he could go to school during the day, we had to do what we had to do because I had this substance of life that I had to meet. And so, when that came in, I was like, okay, here we go. Like it was about investing. It was about doing everything that I can to make sure that made more money because in my mind, it's like somebody left this to me. I gotta leave this to somebody else now. I can't just blow this.
That's good. That's a good mindset to have, especially at that young age. Not a lot, like you said, cars, money, clothes. Like, we rich.
It was like times that like, and even now people laugh at it because I'm like, even my friends like they're always like, you could do this and do that, and I'd be like, I would add the Louis bag in the cart, and then I would be like, okay, I don't really need it.
Yeah,
like,
no.
I'm just going to buy a Coach first.
Yeah.
I'm okay. Coach is cute to me. Like, it's good. So, like, I finally got to the point in life where I have a Louis bag, and I didn't buy it. Everybody like, oh, girl, you fine. I'm like, no, I did not. Like, I just can see that amount of money, and I'm like, you know what I can make off of that? Like, I remember when I bought Amazon, it was like, the stock was like, when I bought Amazon, I think I bought Amazon for like $100 a stock, and I bought maybe like 1,000 shares. Wow. And when Amazon hit, I remember like I was like, I'm gonna go buy me something, and I was like, no, I'm gonna take that money. I was like, I'm gonna go invest that money in something else.
Yeah.
But it's you start seeing that. It's like okay, you start looking. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, what does everybody use every day? So then I started working in the corporate world. I'm like, I'm going to put some stock in Xerox because everybody has to use printers at work.
Okay, teach us.
I mean, it's really that simple. You start looking at stuff. You start looking at the stuff that everybody is going to use. There's no way I should not have stock in Colgate. Who stopped and brushing their teeth? Because we think of these big brands like Nike.
What? I wouldn't put it past.
Seriously, you know what I'm saying? Like people start looking at these big stocks like Nike and Disney, but we don't understand that it's volatile because the moment that Nike gets rid of that top person, that there is look at what Kanye went through.
Mm-hmm.
The moment people stop buying it because the face has changed, but there
Yeah.
are things that you can invest in that people don't. Procter and Gamble, everything. I put a lot of money into them because they own paper, they all this stuff. So when school
Wow.
supplies come back around, I'm up. Like it's good. We're good. People
So you're
buying.
smart.
Yeah, I mean but that's how you learn. Like
Yeah.
you learn it's not because people want to put their money into, like I said, like Nike, but everybody knows that stuff. So part of being successful is looking at the low places and
Yeah.
I think this is gonna make some money.
Buy
People
low,
didn't think
sell
Amazon.
high.
When
Yeah.
I bought Amazon, it was almost 10 years ago, and Amazon wasn't what it was. They didn't have Prime. They didn't have. It was like just thinking that this is this new platform that just started, and I was like, it might be something one day. Same thing with Tesla. When I bought Tesla, Tesla was down, but I'm like, he has a plan. Like, okay, he kind of crazy,
Yeah.
but he has a plan.
Yeah.
One day it might be where all electric cars. So I'm gonna keep my money right there. It might go up and down a little bit, but I got faith in that thing. Lord, we got faith that Tesla gonna come up,
Yeah.
and it has.
So tell us a little bit more about how you got into all of this. Where did you learn most of your information from?
So my grandparents, part of what we inherited, we had, like I said, there was some property, there was liquid cash, but some of it was in stocks. So they had kind of done the work themselves, which I keep asking my aunt, which is my grandma's sister, how did they do this? Because they didn't really leave us a cheat code. It was just kind of like, this is what it is. And then she set us up with an advisor, but the way that it worked for me, the advisor that I ended up getting was somebody that so they had an advisor, but then he obviously had been working with them for years. So when he got me, he said, well, I'm going to give you this guy because I've been doing this with your grandparents for so long, but I'm older. I'll eventually retire, so I want you to have a relationship with him.
Okay.
I think he's great. And so he's not older than, he might be younger than me. I don't know. I will never tell him how old I am, but I'll ask him how old he is. But we started kind of having a relationship, and we just kind of came up with a game plan. We were like, a lot of the money that they had, they did have stocks, but a lot of them were CDs. They were high yielding CDs because they had put these CDs in. And sometimes when people see CDs and they're like, oh, you get a 2-year or 5-year CD. These were CDs that they had put in when I was a baby. These were 30-year CDs. And so it was making big money because the bank was able to do whatever they needed to do with that money for 30 years, even though I wasn't 30 at the time. But I'm just saying, there were some of them that hadn't even matured yet. They were like, okay, we still got 2 more years before we can cash out on this CD because this is a 20-year CD or whatever. And so it was just me sitting down with him and just kind of making a game plan. This is what I want to do over the course of time. I know I want to buy a house here. I know after I buy this house in a couple more years, I'm going to want to buy another house. And so it was me saying, this is what I want. What do I need to do? And it's creating a discipline. It's going to be, I tell people, I bought my first house cash. I didn't have any credit. I didn't have any credit because I was not making good choices. And so I built my credit up, but I bought the first house with the money, with some of the liquid assets that they had given me. And then when we got that house, I had already in my mind that this is my now house, but this is not my forever house. And so I had to put myself on a schedule. I had to discipline myself. I had to say no's to a lot of things when people that weren't as disciplined as me were having, Louis bags and Gucci bags and the things that I really, really knew that I could buy, but I knew that it wasn't going to add value to what I was trying to do in my overall life. And so, I started off just kind of familiarizing myself, asking him for advice, but also telling him what I wanted. I think that sometimes we forget, and I think that he was really good about teaching me that. He could tell me what I wanted, but at the end of the day, making sure that you have control of your money, not trusting somebody else to make those decisions for you. Yes, you could give me advice, but at the end of the day, this is my money. I need to know what's going on. I need to check in with you. I need you, and so we always had that relationship where I would tell him oh, I heard about this stock. Can you do some research? And so he would say, well, I'll figure out what I know. You tell me what you know. We'll come together and see if this is a good investment. But then he would do the same to me. He would come to me and he would say, hey, I think this company really good. We should invest in them. I'm going to give you a couple of days to do your research. Never make an impulse decision when it comes to your money. You don't, if it's good for you, it's going to still be there. And that's coming your faith too. If God put you don't ever have to say no right then and there. Make sure you do the research. Make sure you figure it out. And if you don't know, pray about it. God, I think this might be a good idea for me. But if it's not, let me know. Because I don't want to put my money in something that's going to drop tomorrow. And so it was just kind of connecting and just using my resources because we don't know everything and we want to, but especially with that amount of money. And opportunity, you want to make sure that you definitely use your resources.
So for someone who's just starting out with like learning financial literacy, or maybe like they're young and they don't have nothing, what would you say what would you recommend for them to learn first? Or like because you got all these other, like you talked about CDs, stocks, all these stuff that you can invest in. What would you say is like the starter kit?
The starter kit is saving.
Okay.
Learn how to save. And I feel I tie that back because the easiest way to learn how to save is to learn how to tithe. And not that you are putting your tithing into savings, but if you can put up 10%, if you learn how to put up 10% for God, I tell my friends, do this 10% for yourself. So you put up 10% for God, you put up 10% that you need to save, and then you live your life off of that. And it starts to become to the point to where I'm so used to that 10%, now I'm going to put up 15%. Okay, now I'm so used to 15, I'm going to go ahead and try to do 30%. And you start structuring your life based on that. A lot of people are so scared because they're like, oh, this is, but you don't realize how much like irrelevant money we spend. Like,
Yeah,
I'm like,
we do.
It's like I go to the store and I'm like, oh, it's just $5. The next thing you know, I'm like $79.97. Like,
Yeah.
huh? But I'm looking at the clerk like, you scanned something twice because ain't no way. But when we start putting up that money, you start realizing like, I don't have irrelevant money to spend. You start saving, and then once you get to the point where you're comfortable in your saving, then you can start splurging. But people do it backwards. They splurge and then they want to save, and it's like, you can't do it like that. You put up 10%, put up 10%, put up 20%, put up 20%. And everything you give to yourself, give to God, because as you start giving him more, he starts increasing more.
Hallelujah. Listen, you preaching.
It's how it works. I'm telling you. Sometimes people are like, how did you become? I'm like, the more you give to God, that's not just with your time and your services. The more you give to him, he has no choice but to give you. He's going to, because we expect for him to come out at this level, but our expectations of him are so low.
They are.
They're so low.
He's so
and
big.
he's going to meet you at exactly where you expect. So if you expect more of him and you give more of yourself, he's going to meet you exactly what you expect and exactly what you show is where he shows up.
Yeah.
Every time.
Every time. That's good. I'll take one of your classes if you ever decide to start. I'll be there for sure.
People say it all the time. It's something that God is dealing with me with. Cause I'm like,
what is your hold up with it? Like, is it something you just don't want to do?
I'm okay. Like, my thing is like, I'm a very personal person. Like, I'm very personal. Like, that's, I mean, obviously, you know, like, you might, but obviously, you know, from Facebook, I manage. I'm a manager, but I am very personal, even with like my team. Like if I'm meeting with my team, a lot of people like to just do everything like, okay, we're gonna have one big meeting, and I'm like, okay, no, we're gonna have small 5-minute or 10-minute meetings, because I just feel like sometimes it's good to get the message out to everybody, but sometimes it's just a personal thing. Like my experience, your experience is not the same as somebody else's, and so it's hard for me because I want to give people what God has for me, but I want to make sure that it's very intentional, that I give you exactly what Ari needs. So yeah, I was saying like for me, like I struggle with doing a class because I just like more intimate settings. Like I'm okay all day long if people inbox me on Facebook or text me and they're like, oh, how do I do this? Like I can spend all day with you, but for me it's hard to like create, because everything doesn't apply to everybody in the same way. And so I never want somebody to, especially when money, like things like money and family and religion are things that are very intimate things. They are the foundations of life. And so you want to make sure that whatever you're putting out there is good, that it's right. Like I can talk to you all day long, and if we have that intimate one-on-one, I understand what your needs are. You can tell me and I can invest in those needs. But if you put content out there, thinking you have somebody walk away that may not get what they need out of it, and you never want to feel responsible for that, because then they're like, you told me. I'm like, see, I didn't tell you that.
But not you. I was telling the general public. Yeah, I get that. But like honestly, I don't see you doing like a big class anyway. I see you doing more like the one-on-one advising and like coaching type of thing.
Definitely like a coaching thing.
So that's kind of what I was talking about.
You should do a podcast. You should do this. You should make videos. You should do YouTube. And I'm like, that's not
I don't see you just giving generic financial advice. I think you would get bored, to be honest.
I would get very bored.
Like I think you need to be connected to the person.
And I would make a lot of people fail, because I would need to know exactly what you're stated. Like so everybody's starting at a different transition in life. Some people might start off with absolutely nothing. So I'm not going to tell you to risk it all.
Yeah, you got to be like a finance nerd type of person, like that's just obsessed with it to like make that content, because you're gonna die out. Are you gonna what is the word? You're gonna burn out. You're gonna burn out really quickly, and like not that you're not knowledgeable, but you're probably more knowledgeable, like you said, concerning like somebody's specific financial situation and not just a general,
Exactly.
like this is what,
What
this
you
is what
should
I
do.
know. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely can see you doing like coaching.
Yeah, I could do something like that.
Yeah.
That would be my thing, like one-on-one. I could do that all day long.
So right now you're currently a CFO at a church too.
Yes.
So what is that like? What does that job entail?
It's just basically just it's a little bit different because our church is in a transition, so we're learning what we're kind of transitioning a season to what we need in order to supply where we're trying to go. And so it's just kind of learning like the fundamentals of the church, figuring out, the vision for the church. A lot of people forget that there is a lot of business behind church. Like church is not just all just God, and there has to be
It's an
business.
organization.
It's an organization, and it has to be in order for it to be according to His will and His purpose. And so, it's just figuring out the different aspects of where the vision and how the money aligns with it to do things, for Him to give back, but to also sustain some so that we can progress and continue to do God's work.
That's good. Yeah. So what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned as you like tried to navigate the world of finance? Anything that you can think of?
Just do as much research, like be knowledgeable. Be knowledgeable. Don't depend on somebody else to know what
to
you
do.
want. Yeah, don't, even if they, people get caught up in titles and jobs and they think, oh, this person should know this because they're such and such and such.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll have, connecting with God and just knowing, like, you'll know what is right for you. It doesn't matter what your title is. If God told me no, if He told me not to make that move, I'm not making that move. I don't care how many years of education you have or how long you've been doing this. Like, it's just doing the work and being present for yourself, because we trust a lot of people, accountants and advisors and all type of, we trust people that we see on Facebook that just, you be scrolling and something, a couple of them say, oh, invest in, I remember when people was buying all this different other stuff, and it's like, this is the new now. And so it's just,
they don't want to learn for themselves.
They don't want to learn for themselves. Everybody just wants a get rich quick scheme.
It's easy to fall into.
Absolutely.
I definitely did.
It is. It's very easy to fall into.
But it doesn't last. Like if you can get rich that fast, it's not gonna last you. Like you're gonna lose it just as quick as you got it.
Absolutely.
So that's good. That's some good advice. I like that. So what can we expect to see from you in the future?
I don't know. That's hard. That is the season that I'm in right now, and that's a very good question, because like, I'm in that season right now where I call it the pit. I'm in the pit where I'm just waiting for God to show me what I'm supposed to do. I'm at a place in my life where I have completely pivoted from everything that I've ever done in so many ways. But I feel like God has me here for a reason, that He's showing me something. He's like, okay, how we were talking about earlier, you thought that this is who you were.
Yeah.
But I'm about to show you who
You
I
really
intended
are.
for you to be.
See, that was a word by itself.
It
I didn't
is.
even ask for no advice, but you just
It's
you
hard,
gave it.
because sometimes He'll get you to that place, and He's like, hello,
Yeah.
hello, hi,
good.
it's me. And then you're like, God, I had this. I done done this. And He's like, okay. And that was good. And all of that was not in vain, because everything that you did, the houses you bought, the cars, the money, the kids, the marriage, all of that is about to kick you into what I got for you to do. Sometimes you got to experience some things. You got to have some grit in the game. You can't. A lot of people don't want to go through things. They don't want to lose anything. They don't want to experience the, like I said, the many faces of life, because it's like, if I have to, but it's like, I can never be who I am supposed to be for you. You can't come to me if I don't have experience. What is the point of you seeking me? And so, when we ask God, and I have for a long time, that was kind of my prayer, even like not knowing my purpose and my gift, my prayer was always, God, make me an answer. And He said, okay, but you got to go through some things first so that you know the answer.
Right.
So,
Oh, make me an answer.
make me an answer. I want to be an answer.
Yeah,
whatever it
to a
is.
problem, yeah.
I'm an answer to whoever's problem, whether it's the person that's walking down the street, whether it's somebody who calls me in the middle of the night crying, whether it's my kids, whether it's you. I want to be an answer. I want to be a solution to a problem, that as a vessel of God, though, like that you're going to give me exactly what I need to do to be an answer to that problem.
I like that.
But it's hard.
It is.
When you ask Him for that, you got to be
It is.
prepared.
We had some audio technical difficulties, but our sponsor for this episode is Jolene Originals, was designed by Dahlia Beckett, who is a model and entrepreneur. Jolene stands for God Shall Increase, and the designs are created to inspire the consumer to walk in their power. The story is in the detail, and the clothes speak for themselves. Each piece is uniquely designed with you in mind. The goal for this luxury brand is to encourage confidence while targeting the sophisticated and mystical being. Be effortlessly beautiful. Be unapologetically you.